I had never believed in ghosts. My rational mind dismissed the stories of haunted houses and restless spirits as mere figments of overactive imaginations. That was until I moved into the house on Briar Lane. It started innocently enough. The house was an old Victorian, perched at the end of a long, tree-lined street, its once grand exterior now slightly faded and worn. It had been on the market for years, a relic of another time that seemed out of place in our modern world. When I first saw it, something about its forlorn beauty captivated me. It was as if the house was calling out, longing for someone to breathe life back into its empty halls. The first few days were uneventful. I spent my time unpacking and exploring the nooks and crannies of my new home. The house was filled with antique furniture and dusty portraits of stern-looking ancestors whose eyes seemed to follow me wherever I went. Despite its age, the house felt surprisingly welcoming, almost as if it was grateful for my presence. But then, strange things began to happen. It was little things at first. A creaking floorboard here, a whisper of wind through a cracked window there. I chalked it up to the house settling in the cold autumn breeze. But one night as I was drifting off to sleep, I heard a distinct sound, a soft, rhythmic tapping coming from the attic above my bedroom. I lay still, listening intently. The tapping continued, steady and insistent. I tried to ignore it, telling myself it was just a branch brushing against the roof. But deep down, I knew it was something more. The sound was too precise, too deliberate. The next morning, I decided to investigate. The attic was a dark, musty space filled with cobwebs and old trunks. As I climbed the creaky wooden ladder, a sense of unease washed over me. The air felt thick and heavy, as if I was wading through an invisible fog. At first, I saw nothing out of the ordinary, just dusty old furniture and forgotten relics from a bygone era. But then, in the corner of the room, I noticed an old rocking chair, its seat worn and frayed. It was gently rocking back and forth, even though there was no breeze. A chill ran down my spine. I approached the chair cautiously, my heart pounding in my chest. There was no logical explanation for why it was moving. As I reached out to touch it, the rocking abruptly stopped. The silence that followed was deafening. I hurried back downstairs, my mind racing with questions. What had I just witnessed? Was it my imagination playing tricks on me? Or was there something more sinister at play? I couldn't shake the feeling that I was not alone in the house. Over the next few days, the disturbances grew more frequent and more unnerving. Objects would move on their own. Doors would slam shut without warning, and I often felt a cold, clammy presence watching me. Sleep became elusive as I lay awake, listening to the eerie sounds that filled the night. One evening, as I was sitting in the living room, the temperature suddenly dropped. My breath came out in visible puffs, and a deep sense of dread settled over me. I heard a faint whisper, barely audible, but unmistakably human. "Leave this place." I jumped up, looking around frantically. There was no one there, but the voice had been so clear, so close. Panic set in as I realized I was dealing with something beyond my understanding, something that defied the laws of reality. Determined to find answers, I began researching the history of the house. What I discovered was a tale of tragedy and loss. The house had once belonged to the Ravenscroft family, who had lived there for generations. But 50 years ago, a terrible fire had swept through the house, claiming the lives of the entire family. The cause of the fire was never determined, but rumors of foul play and restless spirits had persisted ever since. I contacted a local historian who confirmed the details of the fire. He also told me about the youngest daughter of the Ravenscroft family, Emily, who was said to be particularly attached to the house. Her room, he said, was in the attic. That night, I climbed the ladder to the attic once more, armed with a flashlight and a newfound resolve. The rocking chair was still there, motionless and silent. As I shone the light around the room, I noticed something I had missed before. A small, ornate box hidden beneath a pile of old blankets. I opened the box with trembling hands. Inside was a collection of personal items, a locket, a diary, and a few faded photographs. The locket contained a picture of a young girl, her eyes wide with innocence and curiosity. The diary belonged to Emily Ravenscroft. I began to read, my heart breaking with every page. Emily had been a bright and imaginative child, but she had also been deeply unhappy. Her family was strict and unloving, and she often felt lonely and trapped. The diary entries grew darker as she described the day of the fire, her fear and confusion palpable in her words. The final entry was a desperate plea for someone to hear her, to understand her pain. As I read the last words, a sudden gust of wind blew through the attic, extinguishing my flashlight. I was plunged into darkness, the only sound the rapid thumping of my own heart. Then I heard it, the soft, rhythmic tapping once again, this time closer, more urgent. "Help me!" The voice was clear now, echoing in the confined space. I fumbled for the flashlight, my hands shaking. When I finally managed to turn it on, I saw her, a faint, translucent figure standing by the rocking chair, her eyes filled with sadness and longing. "Emily?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. She nodded, her form flickering like a candle in the wind. "Please, help me. Find peace." Before I could respond, she vanished, leaving me alone in the dark attic. I knew then that I had to help her, to uncover the truth behind the fire and release her spirit from its torment. But as I descended the ladder, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that something far more malevolent lurked within the shadows of the house on Briar Lane. The days that followed were a blur of sleepless nights and relentless research. I delved deeper into the Ravenscroft family history, combing through old newspapers, archives, and records. I needed to understand what had happened that fateful night, to piece together the fragments of Emily's story. The more I learned, the darker the tale became. There were whispers of family secrets, of hidden rooms and forbidden rituals. The Ravenscrofts were not just an ordinary family. They were said to be involved in occult practices, seeking to harness otherworldly powers. The fire, it seemed, was no accident. It was a result of a ritual gone horribly wrong, a desperate attempt to bind a powerful entity that had been summoned into our world. The townspeople had always been wary of the Ravenscrofts, but they had no proof of their sinister activities. The house had been left to rot, a silent witness to the horrors that had unfolded within its walls. One evening, as I was poring over my notes, I felt a sudden chill. The room grew colder, and the shadows seemed to deepen, stretching out like dark tendrils. I heard a low whisper, indistinct but unmistakably sinister. It was not Emily's voice this time. It was something darker, more malevolent. "Leave, or suffer." The words sent a shiver down my spine. I knew I was not alone, that the entity the Ravenscrofts had summoned was still here, lurking in the shadows, feeding off the fear and despair that permeated the house. That night I had a vivid, terrifying dream. I was back in the attic, but it was not the dusty, abandoned space I knew. It was alive with flickering candles and strange symbols drawn on the floor. Emily was there, but she was different. Her eyes were hollow and her face was twisted in agony. She was trying to speak, but her voice was drowned out by a deafening roar. I woke up drenched in sweat, my heart racing. I knew I had to act to find a way to end the entity's hold over the house and free Emily's spirit. I reached out to a paranormal investigator, a woman named Dr. Eliza Warren, who had dedicated her life to studying and combating supernatural phenomena. Dr. Warren arrived a few days later, her presence bringing a sense of calm and authority to the situation. She conducted a thorough investigation using a variety of tools and techniques to detect and analyze the paranormal activity. "It's a powerful entity," she told me after her initial assessment. "It feeds on negative emotions and has been anchored here by the rituals performed by the Ravenscrofts. Emily's spirit is trapped, but she's not the one you need to fear. The entity is using her as a conduit to manipulate and scare you." Dr. Warren devised a plan to break the entity's hold. It involved a cleansing ritual to purify the house and a seance to communicate with Emily's spirit and guide her to the other side. The preparations took several days, during which the activity in the house intensified. The entity seemed to know what we were planning and was determined to stop us. On the night of the ritual, the atmosphere in the house was charged with tension. Dr. Warren set up candles and placed protective symbols around the room. She instructed me to remain calm and focused, no matter what happened. As the ritual began, the temperature plummeted and the candles flickered wildly. Dr. Warren chanted in a low, steady voice, calling upon protective forces to aid us. I felt a presence, a cold, suffocating force that pressed down on me, trying to crush my spirit. "Emily," Dr. Warren called out, "we are here to help you. Show yourself and tell us what you need." A faint glow appeared in the corner of the room, slowly coalescing into Emily's form. She looked more solid, more real than before. Her eyes met mine, filled with a mixture of hope and despair. "Help me," she whispered, her voice trembling. "We will," Dr. Warren assured her, "but we need to know what happened. Tell us about the fire." Emily's form flickered and she began to speak, her words halting and fragmented. She described the night of the fire, the fear and confusion, the dark figure that had appeared during the ritual. The entity had turned on the family, consuming them one by one, feeding off their fear and pain. As Emily spoke, the air grew thick with malevolent energy. The shadows in the room seemed to come alive, writhing and twisting. Dr. Warren continued her chant, her voice growing louder and more insistent. "By the light of truth and the power of love, I banish thee," she intoned, her voice ringing with authority. "You have no place here. Be gone." The room erupted in chaos. The shadows lunged at us, the temperature plummeting further. I felt a cold hand brush against my face, and a whisper of pure malice echoed in my ear. "You cannot win." But Dr. Warren's voice never wavered. She held firm, her chant growing ever more powerful. The entity's presence wavered, its hold weakening. Emily's form began to glow brighter, her expression shifting from fear to determination. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice clear and strong. "I can see the light. I'm not afraid anymore." With a final burst of energy, the entity let out a deafening roar and vanished. The room fell silent, the oppressive weight lifting. Emily's form shimmered and then slowly faded, a look of peace on her face. Dr. Warren slumped, exhausted but triumphant. "It's over," she said, her voice filled with relief. "The entity is gone, and Emily's spirit is free." As I looked around the room, I felt a profound sense of calm and peace. The house on Briar Lane was no longer a place of fear and sorrow. It was a place of healing and redemption, a testament to the power of love and courage in the face of darkness. I knew then that I had made the right choice in moving here, that I had helped bring closure to a tragic chapter in the house's history. And as I stood in the quiet, moonlit room, I felt a gentle, unseen hand brush against my cheek, a final, silent thank you from the spirit of Emily Ravenscroft.